Ask Me Anything, where you can ask me, a historian, anything you'd like about history or social sciences for the next hour or so. I will be here to answer all of your queries, like we are every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern is our live stream lecture. This weekend will be our part two on Andrew Jackson, the seventh President of the United States. So I'm picking a nice, very fitting historical background for today's Q&A. So please like and subscribe if you enjoy history and social sciences, and drop a comment, topic, or question you would like me to discuss, and I will give you as good of an answer as I possibly can. We do this every Friday and Saturday and Sunday, but also check out our short form and long form content, which we drop. We have short form content daily and videos, usually supposed to be twice in a week, but it's been a while. But anyways, yes. Please join us as we talk about history and social sciences. And you know what? We will be with the Wizard of Menlo Park, Thomas Edison, in the background. So yeah, please ask any questions you'd like. We're starting just a couple minutes early. Usually we start at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's 5:59 right now. So yeah, you're welcome. We got started a little bit earlier than we normally do. So good to see everybody. Hopefully everybody had a really good week. And and by the way, I've got my microphone, but I've got a mic stand now, so you won't even see it. It's off screen. Can everybody hear me all right? Hopefully everybody hears me just fine. Please let me know if you're having trouble hearing me. Okay, so, but yeah, new microphone, new equipment, all the money that we use on the channel or that we get from the channel, from super chats, from memberships, from all the stuff that's available to you if you'd like to help us out, is used to improve the quality of this channel. So that's why we've got the microphone now. I'm here in the Friendly Neighborhood studio in my normal formal attire. Please like and subscribe. And I'm joined with Thomas Edison in the background in the house. So if you have questions about him or about any other type of history or social sciences, please drop it in the chat. And that would be very, very helpful. But yeah, I hope everybody had a very, very good week, and thank you for deciding to start your weekend the right way, at least in my opinion, by joining us here to get all of your questions about history and social sciences answered. Again, we do this every Friday and Saturday for Q&A, and then Sundays is the live stream lecture. We've been doing this for about a year and a half now, and we are a week away. Next weekend, President's Day weekend, big weekend for us, is indeed the 2-year anniversary of the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. I would have been doing this for 2 years now. So we've got special live streams, a lot of bonus content available. But yeah, if you want to know the history of the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, like I said, we got started back in 2024 in February. It's a fun story, but yeah. Anyways, welcome, and thank you for joining us and spending your afternoon with us. Tomorrow, we usually go live at 6 on Saturdays, but tomorrow I'm going to go live at 3 because we had a really successful live stream last week where we went live at earlier. So we're going to go live earlier next Saturday. But join us, get a cup of coffee, something to relax your nerves and calm your senses, and enjoy your weekend. Sit back and relax and enjoy the history that we're going to be talking about today. Do you think the comparison of European colonial rule and Nazi treatment of Jews can be done? It's it's an issue of human rights and human rights violations that were perpetrated by both the Nazis and by the different European powers. I think there's a few differences, though. I think first off, the reason the Holocaust is so awful to so many people is so definitive of what a terrorist genocide based on bigotry looks like, is because it was such a quick thing. It only lasted about 5 or 6 years, whereas the oppression of the Europeans, which led to just as much, if not more, death and destruction and decay for so many people in the non-core countries, parts of the world, the peripheral parts of the world, or what we used to call the third world. The biggest problem is that they actually had it took a long time, and it was an extraction of resources, manpower, it was oppression, it was murder, it was all sorts of violence, conquering, that took a longer time period to do. So I don't think that they're completely comparable, but I think there are some things that they do have in common, including the large amounts of suffering. But it's not exactly a fair thing. There wasn't anything that the Nazis were giving necessarily to the people who suffered during the Holocaust. You have infrastructural development, you have educational opportunities. People like Gandhi, for instance, were educated in European schools. There are things that the Europeans did do in their colonial efforts that were beneficial, and there was some symbiosis that just isn't possible when you consider the atrocities that the Nazis perpetuated. Yeah. So, um, also, do you think the pulling down of Edward Colton statue in Bristol was right? I don't know enough about Edward Colton to say whether pulling down his statue is right or wrong. There are other ways to do history. You don't necessarily need a statue. You don't need somebody's statue to be able to remember their historical impact and what they did. You can read about them in books. You can create presentations. You can watch documentaries, movies about their lives. There are so many different ways, especially with AI nowadays, to actually understand and celebrate and remember somebody's life from a historical vantage point. You would think the Jews would complain half as much about the Holocaust as much as how much. I don't even know what you're saying, Bird Bard, but you're just proving you have a bird brain. What do you think about the rise of disinformation towards history, like fascism and National Socialism being right wing? Isn't dishonest history? Why are they pushing the narrative? There's a difference between modern disinformation versus all sorts of um, uh, what do you call it? Myths. People create historical myths, and myths just emerge over time, and they're not necessarily nefariously intended, as opposed to crafting narratives to fit a political, social, or historical agenda. So I don't necessarily see that as the case. The Nazi thing is just a myth that that they need to be talked about as the right wing equivalent of communism. I don't think that's historically true, and I don't think that makes any sense. But people who are not educated in history just buy into the myths. So that might be a myth that's been perpetuated for political purposes. There's lots of these in history. Basically, the guy was a massive philanthropist. He built hospitals, schools, and housing across Bristol, but he made most of his money off of slave trading. Yeah, he's a controversial figure to say the least. And it depends. How do you want to remember? I mean, slave traders, slave owners built most of the institutions in the West. People who were either okay with slavery or practiced slavery. I mean, John Locke approved of slavery when he wrote the Constitution, or governmental statement of government for the Carolinas. People like that. There's many great philosophers and politicians and leaders, philanthropists, sociologists, people who made a huge impact in history, who obviously have extraordinarily complex legacies. And we often think about it's easy to take someone who is good and just add one bad thing about them and destroy everything about them. So, anyways, yeah. Well, I just don't think people know enough about this guy, about Sir Edward Colton. I don't think people know enough, and when they forget about the history, it makes it so much easier to disregard the history and for the negatives to stand out, like him working on the slave trade. They were clearly on the left, though. Anton Drexler, Hitler, Gentile Mussolini all claim being socialist. Hitler even claimed in 1919 that he was communist, changed his tune, but still a lefty ideology. Oh yes, I don't think that I do see fascism and Nazism as indeed intricately left-wing ideologies. They are based on an authoritarian form of left-wing ideology and socialism. They hate communism, but you know what? Who else hates communists? Look at Stalin. Communists hate each other all the time. It's not uncommon for people on the far left to try to destroy each other. Um, and the fact of the matter is that fascists and Nazis did definitely have their origins, their political philosophies come from the left wing. What they did when they were in power and the way they seized power in places like Spain and France and Italy and Germany was to basically appeal to cultural far-right traditional values and synthesize that with command economies, authoritarian governments, and other factors of socialist economics. You have 5-year plans in the Soviet Union, you have 4-year plans in Germany under Goering. It's not much different what Stalin did in the Soviet Union as to what Goering did in Nazi Germany. So you do have people who are indeed quite socialistic in some of their facets, but are taking right-wing values in order to in order to seize power and push their narratives. So the Nazis are far more consumed with racial ideology than the communists in Russia are. However, the fascists in Italy are not that nearly as consumed by that. They're consumed by nationalist fervor, reviving the Roman Empire, former Italian glory. So there's a nationalism in fascism and Nazism that doesn't exist in communism. It's basically this idea of how can you take socialist factors for social and economic progress and apply it to one society or area. So, yeah. My birthday is not today, but thank you for joining us. We really appreciate that. I don't know why it reminds you of Ben Shapiro. Okay, we've got everybody and their cousins saying free Palestine. We've heard this so many times. Yes, free Palestine. Thank you for coming on to a YouTube chat that's all about history and social studies just to talk about Palestine. Why did the federal government not offer a solution, an alternative to slavery, rather than nuking the whole sovereign state's economy all at once? They had. They had offered that. And the Southerners were irrational. It was so entrenched into their society that the destruction of their society was necessary in order to free all the slaves. Owning a slave in those days would have been as common as owning a car. Common, but not moral. Why do coins have ridges? I don't know. I think it's because it's too. I'm not sure. Um, anyways, other questions about history or social studies? Please like and subscribe. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. This is our Friday Q&A where you can ask me, a historian, anything you'd like about history or social sciences. I'm here I'm here in my studio, but I'm also in New Jersey at Menlo Park with Thomas Edison. That is the background, at least. And no, for those of you who are not wondering, am I in New Jersey? Maybe, maybe not. That is indeed Thomas Edison holding the incandescent light bulb. The Wizard of Menlo Park. I forget the name of his workshop where he and a bunch of other people worked on different designs. But Menlo Park was the community that he was in, that he became the fixture of, and so they called him the Wizard of Menlo Park. I have a question. What was Hitler's crime? You're like 12 and on your phone scrolling, doom scrolling, aren't you? I think you know what Hitler's crimes are, but yeah, the Nazis built roads. Yes, people built. Yes, bad guys sometimes build good things. Wow, what a surprise. Yes, basically it is to stop debasement of currency. Mussolini was a Marxist anarchist syndicalist, but is likely the liberals fascists in power in Canada, but they have to engage in capitalism and other right-wing stuff, but they have a lot of Marxist traits. I wouldn't compare Mussolini to the liberals in Canada. What's your take on Dill? Oh, great question. I don't know yet. Do you know about Westinghouse? George Westinghouse worked with Edison to promote electric lighting in New York City. Westinghouse isn't just a scientist; he's a philanthropist. He's a corporate interest. He's a kind of a robber baron, very very rich, and obviously wants to use Edison and his inventions in order to light up New York City. And this is where the current wars become known as, because you got alternating current versus direct current, Tesla versus Edison, and Tesla was actually ultimately correct. I need to see that movie. Benedict Cumberbatch played Edison in that movie. Yeah, colonizers built things doesn't excuse colonization. Absolutely. Edison or Tesla. I mean, I love both of them, but Tesla is probably the more interesting individual. I also like science. I'm not a big science guy. This is history and social studies, but I appreciate and respect science a lot. And I just think Edison has such a huge impact on all the inventions that he did. You have moving pictures, you have the radio, not the radio, the phonograph. You, of course, have the electric light bulb, the incandescent light bulb. And while Edison didn't design or come up with these ideas on his own, he created a system in which they could be produced easily and patented out to the government very efficiently. Do you know what happened during COVID? Yeah, I remember the Freedom Convoy. Those were a bunch of trucks that they shut down. Explain. Well, debasement of currency happens because people print too much money that governments don't have, and fiat currency basically relies on the value of itself and its own reputation to keep going, even when it's completely out of whack. Which is exactly what happened in Weimar Germany in the 1920s. And if you don't think it can happen in the United States, the Germans didn't think it could happen there after the Great War. So, explain fear mongering about the ever migrating to the U.S., but yet allowing legal channels for them to come throughout history. Has the Great Replacement theory already been set in place? Well, the Great Replacement theory is a huge example of fear mongering. It's people, particularly on the right, who are very, very worried about. Yes, that is Tom Edison. It's people on the right who are worried that right wing natural born people, especially who are white, will be replaced by immigrants and the families of immigrants and people from other countries with other values and other cultures. And it's a popular theory in Europe and the United States. And it is a nativist theory that basically tends to be heavily against immigration, not just illegal immigration, but actually setting ratios and quotas for immigration like there was for the vast majority of American history. As much as people look at the United States as a country that is full of immigrants and built by immigrants and all of those fancy things to say, the truth of the matter is there are long periods of history where the United States struggled with understanding immigrants in their society, and many immigrants were not welcome here, as well as immigrant quotas were set so that people from certain countries couldn't come. Between 1925 and 1965, the United States was very restrictive of immigration. Lied about them. Emergency Act was deemed illegal by our Supreme Court. Had children on shows following script propaganda. People without vaccines should be in jail. Yeah, there was a little bit of that going on. Why do Zionist grifters always promote Islamophobia? I don't know. When I meet the Zionist grifters, because I'm supposedly one of them, when I meet the other Zionist grifters that I'm supposed to know very well, I will ask them. How have you been doing, by the way? I'm doing well. I hope you are good too. It's great to see you. Yeah. Okay, Abraham. You might want to actually get a shrink to help you out with that. Or watch Shrinking, starring Harrison Ford and Jason Segel, now streaming season 3 on Apple TV. The kingdom is within me. Which kingdom? So, what man can do, man will do. Ah, yes, E-Dog, your favorite quote. So, we've got regulars like Jewish Atheist and E-Dog and Hairwolf. We've got, of course, Harry, who's my moderator, who's holding down the chat right now, hopefully. Kingdom means knowledge. Oh, okay. Are you homeless? Yes, clearly I am. Do you make grilled cheese sandwiches at night or only in the afternoon? I haven't made a grilled cheese sandwich in years. But you got to make a grilled cheese sandwich like late at night. Like it's the perfect midnight snack. Am I right? Like saying Tony Hawk Pro Skater on PS1 didn't get good reviews, which it did. Okay. I'm going to take a sip of coffee, but hopefully while I'm taking that sip of coffee, as I suspected I was right all along, you will like and subscribe. I do have an actual job. Yes, you are a regular, Alex. It's great to see you. Oh, that hits good. Very hot, very fresh, brewed it myself, ground up the beans myself. Feel good about it. Feel good about this cup of coffee. Mexican Ben Shapiro is crazy. I will take the compliment about being Mexican, not about being Ben Shapiro. And I have a good Ben Shapiro impression, and if somebody gives a super chat, I'd be happy to do my Ben Shapiro impression. I impersonate figures all the time, but I usually do super chats. Check out my Woodrow Wilson live stream. What are you talking about here, Wolf? PS5 or Xbox? Ooh. Probably Xbox. Your thoughts on the 27-minute burp war? There's a 27-minute burp war? I didn't know that. Keep up the good work. Too many smooth brains out there. That's true. It's great to see you, Carp DM. I do speak fast like Ben Shapiro. That is very true. That comment should not have gotten deleted. But I tried. But I can slow down if you need to. Is this a pro-vaccine channel? This is a pro-truth channel. This channel is about history. I'll talk about vaccines in a historical context. If you want to hear about Edward Jenner and the smallpox vaccine, how Catherine the Great created the public health department in Russia, pull up a chair and stay a while. Get some coffee. So yeah. Yes, Edison isn't all he was cracked up to be. That's true. I stand with history. I stand with truth. That's what I'm going to do. How long until World War III? Well, we've already had World War III, so it'd be World War IV. But yeah, the 7 Years' War is the first World War, guys. Get with the program. Would you ever do a video on truth of burps? I guess I could, if it's actually true. If you're wondering about World War IV, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know. I don't see anything happening very soon. How similar are Czechs to Germans, and where do they come from in geothermal money and gold? I don't know about that last part of the question, but the Czechs are a European people. I don't know when they migrated to Europe. Most people who immigrated to Europe migrate over Turkey and the Asian steppe, either through Turkey or through the Asian steppe, tens of thousands of years ago. There is a lot of similarities between the different Germanic peoples. Obviously, the Germans, the various barbarian groups that would later settle many European countries, were constantly opposed to the Romans, and the Romans could never quite conquer them. The Czechs, the Magyars, who are the basis for the Hungarians, the Slovaks, you have different groups of people who develop their own customs, languages, and traditions. So yeah, Indians own Indian resources, China owns Chinese resources, and I would like to own mine. Sure, you can own your own resources. It's called getting a job. What was the first shot of the Civil War? Fort Sumter, which was attacked It was a federal fort that was attacked by Confederate troops in Charleston, South Carolina. Lincoln sent a ship to resupply it, and basically baited the South into starting the war. I'm not going to talk about vaccine mandates. I'm not. It's too controversial. My job is to talk about social sciences. So if you want to hear about the history of vaccines, the controversies surrounding some of that, I'm more than willing to talk about it. God, I sound like AI when I say that, but yeah. Republican, Republican, Republican. Jeb, why does Republican be the only thing that matters? We talk about the truth behind the famous Austrian painter. He wasn't a famous Austrian painter. He was a genocidal maniac who killed millions of people. There you go. There's some of the truth for you right there. And he was never could have made it as an artist. Although I do have this painting. You'll never believe who made this painting of the Virgin Mary, of a Madonna and Child in 1913. And apparently it wasn't good enough. He was kicked out of art school. I mean, it's a really nice painting, I have to say. But yeah, I'll take mine without a side of genocidal maniac. Thank you very much. What do you think of the Armenian genocide? I have a video on the Armenian genocide. I've talked about the Armenian genocide before. One of the most overlooked historical atrocities in all of human history. It's very simple. The fact that that a country can continually sustain the idea that it didn't happen and be okay, and everyone is seemingly okay with that, is absurd to me. The Gauls were a type of Celtic people. The Celts were Germanic. Yeah, David, I think you're just a troll. Have you ever done the history of the police and military throughout history? No, I've talked about military history when it's important, but yeah. Let me see. How did the economic policies of the Tang dynasty contribute to both its prosperity and its eventual decline, and how do these compare to the fiscal strategies of a later Song dynasty? Well, the Tang dynasty kind of reaffirmed the civil bureaucracy. They encouraged trade, but what the Song did better economically than the Tang did was, instead of relying on trade over land, they were the ones who really started to do overseas international trade, which made trade a lot quicker. The Song also decided to back up their currency. Rather than debase their copper coinage in the 13th century, the Song dynasty began printing banknotes to represent it. So these represent the coinage. So the Tang dynasty actually creates the coinage system, the paper banking, paper money in the 13th century. So the Song dynasty does that well after the Tang dynasty is already gone. Talk about Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is the famous, probably the first premier serial killer in all of history, although there have been serial killers long before him. He is kind of the first consistent mold, you could say, of what a serial killer is. The fact that he's never been caught is probably why he still retains so much information. There are plenty of serial killers from right before and right after his time who have been caught, who rarely anyone talks about. But Ripper was known for murdering London prostitutes and went on a killing spree, which included 5 women. And they found the women. They never found out who he was. So he remains a mystery to this day. And there's no end in sight of ever properly identifying him. The fact that a sadomasochist with perverse sexual tendencies and could commit acts of sexual violence and murder of prostitutes in London's poor streets in the middle of the reign of Queen Victoria is what makes it such a shocking thing. It's a very juxtaposed position, seeing Jack the Ripper do this in a society that has been known for and praised for its conservative moral virtues. Let me see. Well, I hope you got a good answer to your homework question. What do you think about Quebec, the French province separating from Canada? They could become an independent French Canada. That would be interesting. I'm glad you've joined us, Ms. Alley. And we're always glad that when the algorithm is friendly to us. Hey, I always wondered your thoughts on Goering. He had a pretty high IQ and doesn't seem like your typical Nazi. Goering was an ultra-utilitarian. He said once, "I have no conscience. My conscience is Adolf Hitler." Goering was quite brilliant, quite intelligent. There's no doubt about it. I mean, anyone who wants to say the Nazis were all a bunch of bumbling fools or crazy maniacs, like Spielberg says in Schindler's List, are wrong. I'm just sorry, they're wrong. What makes the Nazis so terrifying is that in many ways they were very ordinary people. It means anyone could become just as maniacally genocidal as they were. Goering was intelligent. Goering was resourceful. Many of the Nazis were very methodical. But obviously with no moral compass whatsoever. Total amorality. You think that someone who is stupid is dangerous. Find someone who is intelligent and evil, and you found someone who's very, very dangerous. Let me see here. Hello, M. Willow. Great to see you. Going through the chat. I promise to answer the question as soon as I can. Have you seen Story of the Battle of Platze? No. Okay, Leon, you can shout out your own thing. Chinese history isn't really boring. There's a lot of really cool stuff that happens in it. You have several different imperial dynasties. You have this mandate of heaven that kind of sees one empire rise, then it loses the mandate, then another one rises, then it loses, then it's very cyclical. And you have periods of empires, then you have breaks between the empire. And this kind of is the case from 2000 BC until 1900. So yeah. Are Jews historically good doctors? I guess. In 1967, Democrats perpetuated the longest government shutdown when they opposed the Civil Rights Act. Is that true? I didn't know that. I felt that the recent one with Trump was the longest one in U.S. history. Pretty sure it's that one. I'm pretty sure you are incorrect. Let me see here. Only the elite know there is such a thing as renewable gold. What? There was probably millions of serial killers throughout history, but it was much more difficult to catch them in the past. That's true. We have records of some of them. Wasn't the inspiration for Bloody Mary some Hungarian queen who was a serial killer? Yes. Well, Bloody Mary is Mary, the Queen of England from 1553 to 1558, and because of her efforts to just stomp out the Protestant Reformation and bring England back to Catholicism, within 5 years she killed about 300 people. This persecution of her own people made her called Bloody Mary. It's the inspiration for the cocktail. But Madame Elisabeth Bataille was a Hungarian-French countess who was known for her sadosexual violence, especially towards young handmaidens, supposedly bathed in their blood and all of this stuff, which is probably exaggerated, but there was indeed a real countess, the Blood Countess as she is called, who was quite violent and was quite promiscuous. Yeah, but they haven't identified who he was. I don't know that they ever will. Why did the Jews bring so much to the world in science and medically? Jews study fields that have been extraordinarily lucrative for a very long time. They are also, statistically speaking, well educated, and usually are good at finding economic venues. All the cultural markers for success are usually practiced pretty heavily by Ashkenazi Jews in places like the United States. Why has the USA been so obsessed with Cuba? There's a big brother, little brother relationship. It's also part of the Monroe Doctrine. It's part of the United States thinking it gets to speak more than the rest of the Western Hemisphere and speak on behalf of the Western Hemisphere and do whatever it wants in the Western Hemisphere. There's a lot of that's gone on. Will the petrodollars survive? If not, what do you think the troubles will begin? Don't know enough about it. Hello, Scarapoyan. Great to see you. 9 of the most recent school shooters were transgender. That isn't true, but okay. Did Hitler really ask 7 times for Paris to surrender before he bombed it? If you might be thinking of London, London refuses and he bombs London, and that's the Battle of Britain. Hitler doesn't necessarily bomb Paris. He just gets around the Maginot Line, pushes through the Ardennes forest, and is able to basically whip the French by getting to Paris before the French army can stop him. Who truly destroyed the Library of Alexandria? Was it knowledge deliberately erased? I don't know if it was deliberately erased. If I'm correct, it was an Islamic general. And I forget when. Yeah. After communism, China's culture was destroyed, which is weird because the communism in China has a very strong nationalist tinge through it, where they want to appeal to Chinese culture and make China powerful and strong. There is a nationalism that has run. Communism, if it goes long enough, does become very nationalistic. American exceptionalism is real. When America becomes a majority Hispanic, America will be lowered to the level of Central and South America. That's not necessarily true, and that's not necessarily going to happen. You've wandered into the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, Keezy, where we talk about history and social studies in a friendly, neighborly manner, and I'm just here answering questions as I do every Friday, starting at about 6 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow we're starting at 3 Eastern. Stanford experiment should be studied and compared to authoritative positions. I don't know the Stanford experiment. I need to look into that. I've heard of it before. What do you make of the rampant conspiracy theories going around lately? They've always been going around. It's just a lot easier with the internet and social media to promulgate them without people being educated or willing to debunk them. If gold is infinite, then it is worth nothing. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's not that top notch. You're probably being sarcastic. My French usually sucks, but Madame Countess Elisabeth Bataille. 1995, Bill Clinton administration had nuclear weapon blueprints stolen by China. Now China and North Korea have nukes. The Soviets helped the Chinese get nukes way before then. Wasn't it Mary Queen of Scots? No, that was her cousin, who was eventually killed by her successor and half-sister Elizabeth. Mary dies in 1558. Her sister Elizabeth, probably the most famous monarch in all of English history, Elizabeth I, the queen of Shakespeare's time, puts her cousin Mary Queen of Scots in prison to keep her safe, and then worried about uprisings by Catholics who want to overthrow Elizabeth and replace her with her Catholic cousin, beheads her. It's funny that Mary's son, who is a Protestant named James, will become king after Elizabeth dies, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland. Let me see. Battle of Plataea was taking place while the first famous naval battle killed King Xerxes by the Greeks. Plataea was when they killed General Meridates. Oh, okay. Yep. I'm a little familiar with it. Themistocles creates the Athenian navy by lying to the Athenian people right before the Battle of Thermopylae. Great to see you, Faraz. Thank you for joining us. Philip, thank you for joining us from Australia. We have people from all over the world. 75 days. All right, I'll have to look it up. Thank you, Jeb. American imperialism at its finest. I'm not an imperialist. Why does every country despise Jews? Jews do not assimilate. That's the major reason. I'm going to stay away from that topic today, though. Have you read The Vampire Economy? No, but I guess I should. Why is Washington, D.C. racist? D.C. stands for District of Columbus. Columbus was a racist, and we have his name at our state capital. Says a lot. It's District of Columbia, and it's just recognizing that Columbus created sustained contact with Europe and the Americas. Without Christopher Columbus, the world would not exist the way it does today. There would be no United States. There would be no Latin America. There wouldn't be any of that stuff. Now, it might have happened in a very different way, but Columbus does do something that is obviously necessary for the connection between the old world and the new. So whether you like Columbus or not, you have to recognize how important he is. That's my basic opinion of Christopher Columbus. What is the topic of this discussion? Anything you'd like, I'm good. It's a Q&A. Do you think the Spanish Empire could have ruled the world? They almost did. They basically did. 16th century Habsburgs are at the top and pinnacle of power of any imperial family or dynasty in all of history, just like the Tang, the Mongol Genghis Khan's sons and grandsons, as much as the British under Victoria and Elizabeth and things like that. Victoria, at the turn of the century. How long do you think the USA empire has left on top? I don't know if the US is an empire per se, but at top, I don't know how long. Usually a country stays on top for about a century, and their empire or period of dominance lasts for about 2.5 centuries. What truly caused the sudden collapse of the Indus River Valley civilization around 1900 BC, and why did one of the world's most advanced societies disappear with almost no trace? We don't actually know what caused their decline. A lot of people believe that flooding, global warming might have had something to do with it. Invasions, eventually you get the Indo-Aryan invasion that kind of resettles the land and then codifies the religion of Hinduism about 500 years later. Early civilizations are not easy to trace, and they die out very quickly. But the Indus River Valley civilization was pretty advanced. You had big cities like Mohenjo-Daro, and other places along the Indus River in Pakistan. So, why would they not have a copy of any of the books of the Library of Alexandria? Do you think the value was greatly exaggerated? It could be, but remember back then, copying manuscripts is not what copying is today, even what it was 100 years ago. What do you think of us New Zealanders? Do you think we're good people? I love New Zealand. It's beautiful. Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite movies. There. What happened to Egypt in the past? I recently learned it was completely Christian, although what you did to the Maori people, pretty bad. What happened to Egypt in the past? I recently learned it was completely Christian at one point, but it hasn't been for some time now. Egypt was conquered by the Rashidun Caliphate in the 7th century, and just like the rest of the Maghreb, was converted to Islam, either willingly or by force. And the Christian church there has endured, the Coptic church, but they have been in a minority, outbred and overwhelmed and oppressed by the Muslims on and off for 14 centuries. This includes empires and sultanates like the Mamelukes, the Ayyubids of Saladin, and the great Muslim general, and of course the Ottoman Empire. Let me see. Gold isn't infinite. Yes, gold isn't infinite. You're wrong about a lot of stuff. Democrats oppose the Civil Rights Bill, 75 days, government shutdown. Not knowing about something doesn't make me wrong. Do you think if Carthage won Rome against Rome, the world would be different today? Oh, absolutely. I don't think you have Rome dominating the Mediterranean if Carthage continues to do that. I don't think Rome ever gets the wealth from Spain and the gold mines that the Carthaginians were using before then. I try to be intelligent. I don't know. Was it a partial government shutdown or for 75 days, not a full government shutdown? Could be. Yeah, the longest one was 43 days back last year. With the infrastructure required for a changer, I don't know what you mean. The most recent government shutdown under Trump was due to governments refusing to fund the government. This is a history channel. Stop bringing politics into everything. If you want to talk about geopolitics, you want to talk about government shutdowns, give me a super chat. The Vikings were in America before Columbus. Not permanently. Permanent sustained contact between Europe and the Americas is Columbus. Are you a Jew? No, but Columbus was. Why do you deny white genocide? There are no white genocides going on. I'm sorry, I just don't see evidence of white genocide. What's white genocide? Is this a replacement theory? Replacement theory is probably wrong, and even if it's true, it's not proof of white genocide. Being outbred isn't proof of a genocide happening against someone. Genocide means active, intentional destruction of people groups. Do you believe in the myth of progress? Yes. I don't believe that I am any smarter than Aristotle. I don't necessarily believe humans progress. I believe our ability to gather information becomes easier. Our ability to live comfortably becomes easier, but we don't necessarily become any smarter. I'm not any better morally than, I don't know, Buddha. In fact, I'm much worse than Buddha. How accurate is the reputation of Sparta? Pretty accurate, but you got to understand that reputations, even if they are accurate, often will be the cliff noted summaries of the general realities of a particular group or people. So, yes, Sparta is pretty impressive, but Sparta had many other facets. The strong role of women, their different oligarchical system, their republican values. Yes, they had a kind of republican form of government, while the Athenians were carrying on with their democracy. Don't overestimate what the Spartans were also good at. The Spartans were not totally inept when it came to politics and poetry, and that the Athenians weren't totally inept when it came to warfare. Watch my video where I compare both of them, and you'll really see that I list some of the things that we don't know about Spartan Athens, but that are still crucial to who they are. Do you think Hermann Goering was as evil as his other Nazi counterparts? Pretty much. For 1,000 throats may be cut in one night by a running man. Who's that quote by? Did you know that tomato didn't exist in the old world? Yes, that's true. It was brought from the new world to the old world just like potatoes, but it became more popular in the old world also just like potatoes. True, corn, sweet potatoes, it's all stuff that came from the new world. They were all cash crops and all types of food that were brought from America to Britain, France, Germany, Spain. Why America's Civil War is considered one of the most important events in U.S. history. I mean, it freed the slaves, it destroyed the Southern economy, it refocused America on industrialization, it provided opportunities for African Americans they hadn't had before. Pick your poison. There's so much. It has tried Lincoln as the best president. Same reason Mexico doesn't praise the conquistador Hernan Cortez. The people that were there weren't allowed to choose. U.S. got bullied. I don't even know what you're saying, Armando. Cortez was a violent butcher. Let me see. Fact, Christian crusades were a result of defending Europe against Muslims that were killing massive amounts of Christians. Look it up. That part is true. But it wasn't defending Europe. It was retaking the Holy Land that had already been conquered by the Muslims for centuries. Kosher history, how are you? Fine. Here we go, folks. Here we go. From a historical perspective, which religion's foundational text, the Quran or the New Testament, provide a more historically verifiable account of events, and should historians weigh Scripture? Now, this might be a trap by people, because people come on and say, isn't it true that there's more evidence for Muhammad's existence than Jesus? No, especially not proportionally, considering the fact that Muhammad lived 7 centuries later, or 6 centuries later, 6 or 7. And besides, I mean, there is no Mecca in the 7th century. Sorry, there really just isn't. There's no real evidence that any of the Quran is written before Muhammad dies. There's a lot of historical questions that really raise up questions. The location of Mecca in the Quran, one of them at least, is Petra in Jordan, not even in Saudi Arabia. So, I'm not in a race, though, of saying which one is more accurate. The New Testament, claims that Jesus rose from the dead, and that is a huge, huge historical whopper that we cannot prove. You've got all the early writings about Jesus coming from his followers and closest friends. You've got a lot of historical issues with the birthing of Jesus. You have Quirinius. You have these early claims by the gospel writers about who was around when Jesus was born, and they don't seem to be fully there. Pilate seems to have been a historical myth for a long time, although now evidence seems to suggest that there was a man named Pontius Pilate and he was indeed the governor of Judea. but a lot of people suggest that he wasn't the governor of Judea around 29 or 30 AD when Jesus was actually killed. So there's questions on both fronts about which one is more accurate. I mean, the book of Revelation in the end of the New Testament, at the end of the Bible, is totally allegorical. I mean, it's just the scene is so mythical. You can't treat the Bible as history. You can treat some of it as history. A lot of it is written as a history. The Gospels are biographies, for instance. The book of the Acts of the Apostles is historical. The Quran also includes a lot of historical claims that are very hard to verify. I mean, the Night Journey, for instance. But that was a good question, so I wanted to give a good full answer. Really, you're going to find issues with both of them. There seems to be overwhelming proof, at least from the standards, proportionally by the standards of the time, that Jesus of Nazareth did indeed exist. Muhammad, kind of harder to prove. So you see, there wasn't even any need for a violent takeover. Okay, then, can you talk about the Battle of the Tours when Charles Martel started the Reconquista? Yeah, basically, Muslim raiders or invaders, whatever you want to consider them, had been attacking southwestern France from Spain, from Al-Andalus, which Muslims had conquered, the Umayyads had conquered and would rule from, and basically tried to take over France. And Martel defeated them at the Battle of Tours or Poitiers in 732. Let me see. Do you think it's a genocide in Gaza? No. Next. You want to go back and watch all my live streams and my Q&As and my lectures where I've gone into this in so much detail. It's not my job to prove it. I'm a historian. I'm not an expert in this. I don't agree with the international organizations on it. I just don't. I know enough about the history of genocides that I have studied to say that it's not one, but that doesn't mean that it's not awful. It needs to stop. How could Pericles be considered such a great intellectual when he encouraged the Athenians to go to war with Sparta? The Peloponnesian War wasn't a foregone conclusion. What war that lasts 25 years is a foregone conclusion when it starts? The Delian League and the Athenians were at the height of their power at the beginning of that war. Alexander was definitely the loss of the Athenians and the destruction of the Delian League to open up the eyes from all the lies and propaganda told constantly by historians. Okay? You are Wikipedia. Sure. What do you think it took What do you think it took to survive the plague? Any interesting facts at the plague? It was really hard to survive the plague, but some people did. The Emperor Justinian survived the plague, but it made him paranoid and weak. It's actually pretty verifiable. If you are a Democrat, you are not moral. Okay? And if you are a Republican, you are not moral. These are just phrases you're using. They don't have any value. I haven't seen 300, but it's way off in Never Never Land. No, Athens is the first democracy. Thank you for subscribing, Aman, though. It's great to have you here. How did the work look like if Carthaginians won how would the world look like if the Carthaginians won the Punic War? I don't know. I just don't think Rome gets the foothold that it will eventually get, and I don't think you've had the formation of Europe from that. I don't think you have a dissemination of Christianity. It would have been very interesting to see how a Carthaginian empire would have lasted, how long it would have lasted, what it would have run up against. Would the Romans have been able to eventually destroy it later on? Do you think Tunisia was important in the history of Rome and the Byzantines? Well, if you consider the Carthaginians were from there, then yeah. What is the definition of a republic? Representative government where people vote for leaders who make laws for them, but it's not directly voting for laws or rules. Have you been to any historical sites? Yes, a few. Did you know the Maori held the pass of the legendary Leonidas? That sounds like an exaggeration. Why do people hate Jews so much? Beats me. I'm just the messenger boy, and I get killed, and I'm the messenger boy. Yeah, the Carthaginians had an extremely advanced and very strong navy. It's kind of crazy that they lost. All the history has proven that only a biological female could have a baby. Yeah, I get it. Stop. Why? This isn't a political channel. Who are you arguing with? Who are you talking to? Nobody cares. White genocide did take place in Zimbabwe and now is taking place in South Africa. How? Explain. Bring back Crusades. They will come back one day. You don't want the Crusades to come back. They weren't successful. Even if you're just like this over-the-top, pro-Christian, raging Vatican flag profile in your YouTube profile picture, you don't want the Crusades. Christopher Columbus is a Genoese Catholic who may have converted from Judaism to avoid persecution. Probably, but he was an ethnic Jew. Why did Hitler hate the Jews? Jealousy, blaming, scapegoating, all the reasons people normally hate Jews. They have all the money. They control the world. They are responsible for everything bad in the world, all the immorality, all the communism. This is the stuff the Nazis repeated constantly, pointing out that they've been expelled from a bunch of countries, pointing out that they were responsible for their economic power place in getting them to lose Germany to lose the Great War. It's just all about the Jews are doing everything. It's just absurd nonsense. It's obscene wickedness, to quote Christopher Hitchens. Hello, Martin. Good to see you. Yeah, the expulsion can be ethnic cleansing, but it doesn't necessarily mean genocide. At least you acknowledge your historical knowledge is kosher. Kosher as in okay and acceptable? Yes. Christopher Columbus isn't praised as Cortez. Following CH came mass genocide. Mexico City isn't Hernan City like Washington, D.C. Huh? Columbus didn't start the United States. Do you know the story about the Titanic? Yes, it's the ship that sunk, the unsinkable Titanic. It's actually a myth that people say that it wasn't unsinkable. People did say it was unsinkable. Can I start a new religion? Advertise whatever you want, but give me a shout out first. What do you know about William the Bastard and his connection to the Jews? William the Conqueror, the Norman general who conquered England and started the royal family that rules England to this day. Quite a bit, actually. Built the Tower of London. Had his innards exploded at his own funeral. It stank up the place and the priests had to rush through the mass. True story. Are there ever writings about Jesus outside the Bible? Not from people who were directly alive with him. St. Paul might be the closest. Josephus, Flavius Josephus, Tacitus, Pliny the Elder, all of the early Roman historians seem to, of the first century, acknowledge that Jesus of Nazareth was a real man. Good to see you, Shuriken. How about the Three Sisters? A brilliant sustainability strategy growing corn, beans, and squash together. Yep. The Three Sisters. How the Algonquins helped the Pilgrims survive at Plymouth. And why William the Bastard allowed Jews back in England. I don't know. Maybe they financed him. I don't really care. Who cares? I'm going to take a lot of flack about this, but I don't care. To me, Jesus was a Bronze Age common man. People believe that, can believe that. Jesus wasn't alive in the Bronze Age. He was alive during the Pax Romana, which is why the Christian faith spread the way it did. But, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to make talk about Jesus from anything but a historical perspective because that's my job. My job is also to keep my phone alive, so I'm going to have to charge right now. So I'm going to move from this spot over to my other spot on the. Just give me 1 second, and I'll be right with you. Please like and subscribe in the meantime, and take a little coffee break, or go to the loo, or whatever you need to do. Good to have you here. Okay, we're back. Yeah, we are back. Okay, and let me see. I'm going to try to catch up and get through the chat. We're at 48 minutes. We'll go probably another 15 minutes or so. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I don't know about Edison being a sex pest. That sounds weird. Let me see. Even Roman historians say that Jesus manifested existed, but just debating whether he was the Son of God. Yeah, the Romans aren't going to believe that, obviously. I've been live for about 48 minutes now, Gerald. We usually go live at 6 p.m. Eastern. Was Calvin Coolidge's exercise chair effective? No, I didn't even know he made one. So probably not. I am indeed teaching history right now. New Testament is written as mythology just much as history, not unlike much. Yeah. But the interesting thing is that that's true. But a lot of Greek and Roman history is written with that mythological mindset. And yet nobody talks about the historicity of those events. But because there's miracles in the Gospels, Jesus can't exist. It's just bias. It's just ridiculous bias. Hijra is not just a word for migration Islam. It's a religious obligation to migrate to non-Muslim lands with the purpose of spreading Islam and spreading it as the dominant system. Well, you've got the Hijra of Muhammad in when he's kicked out of Mecca and he has to go to Medina or Yathrib. So yeah, what have I been chosen for? Athens was a democracy for male landowners, no women allowed. That's almost true of every single democracy in history until the last century. The idea goes straight back to Muhammad himself and fled Mecca to Medina. Yep, there you go. Not to escape war, but to strategically build power. Yep. And what I feel is that ever since then there has been an attitude of what I would call a victim attitude that is common for radical Muslims, for militant Islam, where you have this idea that even if you are pillaging, conquering, and destroying people and taking their land, you are the victim because of what happened to Muhammad. You are just continuing that struggle. Rats are very clean animals and got bad press for it. I don't know if that's true, Martin. I think rats were responsible for it. Is democracy just a psyop from the CIA? Yes, everything is a psyop from the CIA these days. I'm sure you were watching Candace Owens before you came here, Bubba. Let me see here. Pharaoh, let my people go. Nah, I'm too busy. Who is the federal government? No, this is Patrick. Homosexuality has been condemned by many societies. Why the Greeks accepted population control? It was cultural and societally acceptable for the Greeks to practice homosexuality. If you ban homosexuality or declare it immoral, you're declaring immoral most of your male population who may not have been actually explicitly gay in the way we think of monogamously gay people who are with one partner or in consistent homosexual relationships all throughout their lives. But what was interesting is that for them, it was kind of almost like a phase. And so it has to be an acceptable part of your society because it's happening all the time. You usually had older men and younger men in relationships like that had a pedagogical teaching quality to it, if you will. Recently, some Iranian protesters burned mosques. What do you think of that? Violence is not the answer. Can you talk about Jews in Iberia's Muslim migration to North Africa escaping the Reconquista? So in 1492, the Reconquista is complete when Granada is conquered by Ferdinand and Isabella. And what they do is basically push all the Muslims and Jews out of their country. They also torture and kill a lot of them because they had been baptized Christians, but they didn't know they had a Jewish or Muslim identity. That's what happens. It happens to the Muslims and Jews of Spain and Portugal. I guess I'm handsome. Thank you. Let me see. Can you think of a hot take about American Civil War? A hot take. I like doing historical hot takes. I do those videos quite often, but no, not off the top of my head. The Civil War was always about slavery because for some reason everybody wants to say it was not about slavery. They want to sound so pseudo-intellectual with the whole, well, Lincoln didn't want to end slavery. Lincoln was okay with allowing slavery to continue. Kind of, not really. Lincoln had a strategy. There was a method to his madness. Are you an ex-alcoholic? Yeah, sure. And now Horace is finally back. The only people that said the Titanic was its operator. Its builder, Harland and Wolff, never said it was unsinkable. But that was the reputation it had garnered. So that is not a myth. What are the impact of the Carthaginian Empire of modern-day world and USA? Not a huge amount. It has a historical significance because you have the Punic Wars, you have Rome growing to power because of it, and everything Rome is responsible ever since then. But Carthage is a fascinating society, the civilization of the ancient world. Please follow our social medias that have been put by Hars in the chat. Let me see. Also known as Hank Douglas, I, Faraz the Great, declare my new religion of Farazian, the ultimate truth. Please join me. Okay, sure. Oh yes, Jesus' existence followed by around 300, 400 years before people remembered his existence again. What? Flavius Josephus was writing 40 years after he died. The New Testament is completed by the end of the 2nd century, at the very absolute latest, probably sooner than that. Some people even think it's finished by the end of the 1st century. So, no. And Jesus continues to be a source of persecution. The Christians continue to be persecuted because of him throughout the 2nd and 3rd and 4th centuries. Are you an AIPAC supporter? Oh, here we go again. No, I'm not an AIPAC supporter. The profile picture is a joke because people think I'm paid by AIPAC when I don't get any AIPAC money. So, let me see here. Okay, can we not delete all the messages? Hello, Hars. Who do you think gave the better speech before battle, Hannibal or Alexander the Great? I haven't read their speeches. Alexander was an impressive leader, but Hannibal, to keep them in Italy for that long, I'd probably lean towards Hannibal. Sim was in the Epstein files. May as well have been. Who isn't at this point? Why every society in history was patriarchy? Like why men always had advantage to women in every culture? I just think there is something. This is why I love studying history. One of the reasons, all of the patterns and trends that end up being the same, and one of them that's certainly very much the same throughout all of human history is that men tend to be in positions of authority. Now there are matriarchal societies and pockets an example, but they're exceptions to the rule, and that's why they stand out so much. It does seem that generally speaking, male authority is something that is kind of taken for granted in ancient and medieval societies and has trickled down to today, but changed in various ways and forms. And this is nothing against women or for men. It's just saying how societies have organized and stratified themselves. No matter where they are in the world, you seem to have some sort of feudalistic system emerging in the Middle Ages in places like Japan and England that have nothing to do with each other. But in civilizations from Australia to Canada, you've got pretty, generally speaking, patriarchal civilizations developing. Let me see here. Thoughts on Roman Emperor Nero? I don't do the whole revive Nero thing. I think he was a pretty brutal despot. What historical character you feel is most similar to you? I think I'm unique. I'm going to argue that it's more like bisexuality. It's just a dominant orientation and people don't understand the difference between wanting to identify something versus identified. That's true. And it's just so much the binary of gay or straight today that there is a lot of bisexuality that people do not understand that happened in history, or experimentation, heteroflexibility, whatever you want to call it. Friendly history about perishing. You can't whitewash the negatives I've said already about Wilson in regards to World War I. Instead, puts the credit. Okay. Let me see. They talk a few good things about the Roman Emperor Nero. Pause. What is your favorite history subject? I love studying Russian history, but I tend to try to love every single history that I come into contact with. Your personal opinion, do you prefer Romans or Carthaginians? The Romans, but the Carthaginians are pretty impressive. Let me see. Masada was not with Josephus. Josephus was long done as a Jewish leader. He had actually been a general that Vespasian captured and then basically turned into a larper for him. Why some people look down upon the people who spoke more than one language? Bias and anger? I don't know. Jealousy? People hate what they don't have and can't have and what they don't understand? This woman who only spoke English made fun of me for speaking two languages. Why do you think that was? Because she was racist? I don't know. Not my job to figure it out. Do you know much about the Axiomates? Not much. Today's calendar is the Roman calendar. True, the Julian calendar. Do you think Hannibal is Phoenician? Phoenician would be the better way to say it. They were the Phoenicians, which just adds to the complexity of the Maghreb, North Africa, and why it is not African in the way we think of sub-Saharan Africa. Why history, not current affairs? Most history is the current affairs of yesterday. Why you don't think Bush was underrated president? Because the American economy was ruined, 2 wars went nowhere. I don't know anything really that great that George W. Bush did. Are you a Zionist? Okay, let me just point this out, and I wish my moderators at this point would just put disclaimers about the Jewish thing and Israel. If by being a Zionist you mean I support the right of the Jews to have their own state in the Middle East, and I think self-determination is good for them, yes. If by Zionist do I mean that I want the Greater Israel Project where all the other people are kicked out or brutally massacred? No. Can there be a 2-state solution and you be a Zionist? Yes. Can the Jews live and survive in that land and not be constantly attacked? Yes. And you be a Zionist? Yes. That's all possible. Can the Palestinians stop dying and suffering and you be a Zionist? Yes. You can want multiple things. Hello, Meow Wolf. Why didn't you compliment Nero? Because there's not much to compliment. I mean, the man kicked his pregnant wife to death, so if the South believed in states' rights since they entered the Union voluntarily, why couldn't they just leave voluntarily? I go with Andrew Jackson on this one. Our federal union, it must be preserved. You entered a binding contract. It's your job to fix it and change it. You have a system that allows you to fix and change it. You don't just walk away. Are you going to do a live or VISO about the Winter Olympics? No. Our video. I have an entire video series about the Olympics because my first year doing a channel, the Olympics were going on. So, yeah. Yeah, it is half Greek. Well, Hellenism is extremely influential in the development of the Middle East and even Semitic culture. Look at the Septuagint. Why Hannibal lost in the last seconds? What are the details that made him lost? The Romans under Scipio Africanus basically did to Hannibal what he'd been doing to them and invaded his own lands, forcing him back to fight Scipio at Zama. And the Romans had the better army. And after years of just basically beating them on their own turf, Hannibal couldn't beat them on his own. Why many Sephardic Jews migrated to Tunisia after the Reconquista? Many Jews felt more at home in the Islamic world under the Ottoman Empire than they did in Christian Europe at the time. Phoenicians are the Lebanese, and I think the Arabic script was derived from the Phoenician script, and I think the Latin alphabet also has its roots. The Latin alphabet is kind of the same as the Arabic alphabet, but yeah, pretty much. The Phoenicians did develop the first language. What's your favorite part in history? 19th and 20th century Russia is my biggest focus. Why is Adam Driver in front of a pic of Edison? I'm not Adam Driver, but I take the credit. I'll take the compliment. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel where we do history in a friendly, neighborly manner. I'm not anti-capitalist, but I'm not. But I mean, I don't really want to talk the politics of it. I think there's good things and bad things about capitalism. If you want to know more, like and subscribe. Maybe you'll figure it out by watching my videos. Give a super chat. Why in all of history every U.S. president is pro-Israel? Isn't there a pattern? By the way, it's good for me. Yeah, I mean, America supporting Israel has been kind of wanting to have a satellite state in the Middle East. They want to support what they consider to be another democracy in the world. And they also have someone that can help them against the Russians, because the Russians are obviously the Soviet Union at that time. So having a satellite state that is loyal to you, or at least your friend on paper, in the Middle East is huge for the U.S. So the U.S. has used Israel. It's not just Israel using the United States. Well, you can like whatever you want. Nero's interesting. There's nothing, many brutal and awful people in history are interesting. Was it a winner in the 30-year war? If anything, the French, Cardinal Richelieu, set up the French for more success in the 17th century. If there's a loser, it's the Habsburgs. Well, the Romans conquered all those people, and that's why they were able to dominate the entire world. Let me see. I'm from Edison's boyhood home. Do you know the city? Isn't it in Ohio? Isn't he originally from Ohio, then he ends up in New Jersey? No, I can't see the pattern. No, humans have not become more moral. They've just become more. They become better at dealing at technology, building things and making things. Oh, Michigan. He was from Michigan. Interesting. Are you some type of waiter at a fancy diner? No, this is my formal wear I wear on the channel all the time. Speaking of which, we're going to sign off. We've been going over an hour now. And I appreciate all the questions and answers. If you didn't get your questions answered, please join us tomorrow. We'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern instead of 6 p.m. Eastern, so 3 hours earlier. We like the audience we got last week, so we'll hopefully keep that going. So please join us then. Like and subscribe on your way out. Will AI make U.S. history? No. Yeah. No, I'm not mad today. I just got through everything, and we're good to go. And Anders, why don't you join us tomorrow, and I'll tell you all about the Boston Tea Party. No, the anti-Semitic crowd was here, but I just didn't engage with them. Yeah. So hope you guys have a great, it is Thomas Edison. Hope you guys have a great Friday. I'll see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. You can come and ask me more questions about history and social sciences, and our live stream lecture will be Sunday at 4. Check out all of the short and long form content. Leave a like and subscribe, and as always, love history. Bye-bye now. Take care.